Well, good morning and happy Monday to you. It's the Monday morning quarterback. A little different format today, Jesse.
Yes, so we're gonna try a podcast so people can, more easily listen in their car or on a walk.
This doesn't have anything to do with the way I look today, does it?
No,
We're not using video.
it's more that I decided to not put
Oh,
on makeup this morning.
I've got a great face for podcasts.
Well, so do I today.
No, I disagree. Anyway, hope you're doing well. Hope everybody's having a great Monday morning. Beautiful day here in the bluegrass. About 71 degrees and sunny. Nice little gentle breeze up on the Walnut Hill. And if you haven't worshiped with us yesterday, if you would go back and take a listen and worship and then rejoin this podcast, that would be wonderful. If you have already been with us and heard Ephesians chapter 2, beginning with verse 11, let's dive right into it. I do have to say that after the service, I had someone who visits our church on a pretty regular basis ask me about artificial intelligence and pastors. And,
Oh,
could you one day see pastors become like the Flippy Fry station
yeah.
robot? I guess you could.
Well, I worry about that with marketing
Mhm.
too. I mean, it's so frequently used now in marketing, and it just does speed up the process.
Yeah.
And I've seen where it creates graphic images that aren't that great. It's still
Sure.
missing the
Hey,
market,
it's
but
still nascent though. I mean, we're still
yeah,
getting started.
exactly. No, it's a thing. Do you think it could ever replace?
I probably in some ways.
Wow.
I think there's some, human empathy and love that, is irreplaceable. But I mean, you already have examples of people falling in love with AI bots
Right, which is
and
scary
wanting
in
to get
itself.
married to them
Yeah.
and all that. I think, if you look at some of the mega churches are using holograms and
Wow.
it's still the actual pastor delivering the sermon. Just it looks like that pastor's standing in front of you when he or she is actually not. And so it's gonna be it's crazy new world.
It is, but, I think I haven't been in worship service for a while, just things going on this summer, but I got to come back
Mhm.
yesterday,
How did
and
how'd it feel?
it felt great. It's
Yeah.
just so different being there. I mean, and that's kinda why I don't think AI will replace, like thinkers and people who are putting ideas out there into the community, especially excuse me, I have a very rude dog here today. She'd be
Really?
very needy. But in any event, because there's just a feeling when you're in the same place with people who are listening to the same, kind of sermon, you get the interaction with the laughter. There was quite a bit of laughter yesterday, which is always good. And you just leave feeling better. You get to talk to people on your way in, on your way out. You can't get
Right.
that if there's a holographic minister.
Yeah, I think y the, we're taking off from the whole notion that the world's gonna change more in the next 5 years than it did in the past 400, which I still can't wrap my mind around,
Yeah.
but apparently it's just coming. It's gonna be like an avalanche that once it starts, we just can't even escape it. And the church is gonna have a really significant role in culture, I think,
Yeah.
with contact and connection and engagement with people, and so if the church were a stock 10 years ago, I would say I'm not sure I would buy it because it
Mhm.
looked like church was sort of losing its, position in our culture. I do think that with this changing world, I think the church is gonna become even more significant. I think I'd buy that stock.
Yeah, I think it is too, especially when things are becoming so depersonalized. I think we're going to search for that personal connection even more. And certainly, as I've seen it, through different generations, my parents, my grandparents, myself, every generation, I think, has a nostalgia for the past,
Mhm.
and you want to, go back to kind of what you did as a child, and one of those things is going to church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I was when I was reading about this and the changes that are coming, of course, driverless cars are gonna become a thing, but there are some who say that more and more people will want to drive just because it was what they did when they were young, and
Right.
it's what you do, and I don't need to drive, I just wanna drive.
Yeah,
And hopefully church will become that thing, and of course, the one thing we can't ignore, the one aspect is that we do have a God in heaven who is sort of over this creation,
right,
and I believe that God is gonna draw people into the church.
right.
I really just believe that's gonna happen.
And I think it really connects with what you were saying with the Harvard flourishing study
Mhm.
too, because And we talked about it this morning a little bit, but it's so interesting to see an academic institution, really focusing on religious life and its importance in our daily lives and how it makes us just better humans and better and healthier.
Right. Well,
So
healthy, like physicians are
right.
the same, they're also, I hear from physicians who are saying the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't necessarily think the medical profession.
Right, exactly. And so I think, even though we are expanding into AI and the future, quote unquote, I think a lot of people are starting to recognize the impact and how maybe it's nice to go back to the church
Mhm.
now.
So are you excited about the future, or because you and I are of a different generation,
Sure.
are you excited about it, or are you filled with some dread and
Yeah.
some concern?
Well, speaking as a millennial, I hate to speak for
Right.
my generation, but I think our kind of go-to is anxiety. So I'm a little anxious about it. I think we're very quick at picking up new technology, so that's not as much of a concern. But you do wonder about job replacement and just also how much. I mean, if we are using AI powered tools for different industries like marketing, you kind of wonder, will those people be replaceable? Are you going to be expected to produce more? um, just more on a daily
Right.
basis, and what's that going to look like? So
The Flippy Fry station robot.
yeah, exactly.
And never calls in sick, never misses a day, never has a bad day, never takes a vacation.
So true, but it will break.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will
It
break.
I at one point in a previous life, I got into a business, and I was told it was a passive business that would require no oversight, and what I didn't realize at the time was that if anything has a moving part, it will eventually break.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, that was not one of my better decisions.
Yes, and as people say, and again, this is a nostalgia for the past, I guess they don't build them like they used to.
There we go.
They don't.
Spoken like a true millennial. Not really. So I kind of wanted to launch into our message just having people think about the role of church and culture, because I think in this passage we're looking at, Paul is really sort of talking about what the church is to look like and what the church's mission is. And I wanted our congregation and those who listen online to be thinking about, um, do I really need the church?
Right.
Is the church really necessary for me? Can I have a really wonderful life outside the church? And of course, many would say that you can, but I think what Paul's saying here is the church has a really significant mission and a significant role in culture. Um, he starts out by discussing the differences between the Jews and the Gentiles. And I wanted to make that leap from the Jews and the Gentiles just to people in today's world who have varying differences over, whether it be race, political views, socioeconomic class, geography, education, whatever. Because I think we do tend to say in our culture these days, boy, we're just so divided and things are so, they've never been like this before. And I really wanted to emphasize that in Jesus's day, of course, the language around Jews and Gentiles was strangers and aliens from one another. We talked about the temple and how by its very architecture, it created barriers between people.
Right.
The rebuilding of the temple, and the Samaritans said, hey, let us help you out. And the Jews are like, you guys just stay over there.
Right.
And then, of course, going all the way back to Cain and Abel, the very two first siblings in human recorded history, and one kills the other.
Right.
So we've always had these divisions, and Paul was just putting that out there, and I tried to do that yesterday.
Yeah. I
Is-
liked that you went back to Cain and Abel because it really does show how we are rooted in conflict. And I do think the Bible is a really good map for how to deal with that and how, what's a healthy way to deal with it.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that this coming
Yeah.
week
Yeah.
as we get into
Oh, good.
chapter 4 too.
Good.
Um, yeah, I really wanted to emphasize that I didn't have Cain and Abel in my notes. I'm just looking at my sermon notes. It just sort of came to me as
Yeah.
I was teaching yesterday. But then he makes this interesting shift, and if you've got your Bibles open, or your Bible open, verses 13 and 14, he begins by just noting, but in Christ, or but now in Jesus Christ. And so God is going to do something new and something different, and the work of God is the work of reconciliation.
Right.
And he notes there that, those who are far off have been brought near. The dividing wall has been broken down. That is the hostility between us. A couple things there that I thought were important for us to think about. First of all, the idea of being strangers and aliens, now we're suddenly in close proximity. We've been brought near. And how? Through Christ. Not through any other negotiated peace, not through any other treaty, not any kind of handshake deal. The peace is Christ. He is our peace. And in the early church, because of those deep divisions, they had to focus on that. They had to keep in mind constantly the peace comes only through Christ. And then the idea of the dividing wall, breaking that down, of course, the dividing wall, they're thinking about the temple and all those barriers, but he defines the dividing wall as hostility
Right.
between us. As you were studying that, Jesse, any insights about hostility being a dividing wall
Oh,
or how we find peace with one another?
absolutely. I mean, I don't think you can be in our country in the past couple weeks and not see how hostility is
Mm,
driving us apart. And you did bring in the example of, differing political views and how that kind of makes us like the Jews and the Gentiles now. I think it's so relevant. And there is a hostility there. I mean, there always has been. I mean, I think Andrew Jackson got into a cane fight on the floor of Congress at some point.
they got,
But
you got Hamilton and Burr and our,
exactly, I
yeah,
mean, but I think it's risen to a level now where it's not just politicians, it's individuals. And so, yeah, I mean, how do you deal with that hostility and what does it do ultimately to our relationship just every day?
right. It is. It really is a big thing that's going on there. Somebody just brought my keys. Thank you, Chris. I don't even know what I just said, but
That's okay. We get visitors all the time here.
we do.
Nice.
Uh,
So we were talking about the different political,
right.
yeah, parties. And actually, we had someone reach out to us and talk about the difficulty, even dating with different
No.
political and how, I mean, I want to say how hostile just because we are using the word hostility, but it's almost from the example you used yesterday. If, you get in a car wreck, you almost wonder if someone's going to say, wait, first,
Yeah.
are you this or this?
Right.
And if you're this, then I don't want your help.
Exactly. You can't treat me
Exactly.
in the emergency room. You can't treat me.
Right. And so it does feel like we've reached that point, and I think it just makes what Paul is saying here even more powerful and more present and more important.
Well, you are dating. So how would you counsel this person who's reaching out saying, "What do I do when I am dating someone and they are of a different political persuasion?" What would you counsel that person?
I think you can say two things. I think it's always good to have a house divided in some ways because you exchange ideas as long as those ideas are exchanged in a caring and thoughtful manner. Because a lot of times, as Paul's saying, it's not anymore, even within families, right? It's if you don't like what I'm saying, then unfriend me on Facebook, or we're getting those things. And so I think like I said, a house divided, I think lots of things can be learned there, but it has to be done in a caring way. Of course, it's always nice to have someone who agrees with you. So it's nice to have someone who comes from the same political ideas and kind of morality that you do, but you're only hearing one point of view.
Very
So I think it has to be both people really willing to hear the others and really willing to consider and not just waiting in the conversation to respond with, well, this is what,
yeah.
it's really a true conversation.
So it's not as much about the differences in political views as it is the ability to listen and to,
Right. And to actually take in another point of
yeah.
view, I think responsively and, um, truly.
Yep. I was thinking along those lines too, that it's about the individual. In my mind, it's about shared values and virtues. And, if your political views create in you something that is a value that the other person cannot tolerate, then that's a conversation to have. But I would first look at values and virtues before I started looking at political views.
Yeah.
But it was a great question, wasn't it?
It
Somebody
was.
who's not a part of this church who listens to our worship online. And
Yes, I love
I
it.
guess I guess they're a part of the church, just
They
not
are part.
physically a
Yes,
part of the church.
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's going on there. And so again, Paul is concerned about this fledgling church. I mean, they're in this very strategic location. They're in Ephesus, and they're out in the marketplace now. They're in the academy now. He's lecturing in these very secular places, and they're so different in the church. He's concerned that they're going to fracture and just
Right.
really disintegrate, and so he's trying to keep them together. And of course, again, he notes that it's the blood of Christ that brings about that peace. But reconciliation, I think, is one of the primary ministries of the church,
Mm.
that we're reconciled to God and reconciled to one another. And I really try to be careful to stay away from politics, from the pulpit, because not that I'm afraid of it as much as you say one thing and you lose half the room, because
Right.
their minds, our minds, I'm the same way. They can't quit um, working on that thing that they've heard and trying to process that. Then they become angry, and next thing you know, they haven't heard anything since.
Right, and that's the hostility, right, that Paul's warning
Mhm.
about. I think, but that's where if we were willing and able to see the other side's point of view to really weigh it in our mind, it's hard to do because,
Mhm.
it is so, emotional nowadays, political,
It is.
ideologies. So, yeah, I think if you can really just hold another person's thought in your mind without anger and really try to evaluate it,
Right.
that would get us so much further. But I wanted to ask you, I mean, so Paul is saying, we can do this through the blood of Christ. How do we do that now in today's world where I mean, I think we are seeing an increase
Mhm.
in people coming back to the church, especially in the past few weeks. I know I've seen lots about that, but
Mhm.
how do you think we do that with people who kind of aren't tied into a religious life?
I think we have to take the church outside into the marketplace. We have to take the church outside the walls. And I'm not saying you're holding a worship service on the street corner, but that we are far more bold to engage with people in a non-church setting and just become friends with them. I believe evangelism is person to person.
Right.
You know, I know that some churches have been built on these massive revival style events, but I think that if you look at the New Testament, he sends these disciples out kind of two by two, and they're just going and meeting people.
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, the church is to be out in the marketplace, out in society, and just engaging folks. Like a quick example, I write my sermons at a very secular coffee shop
Right.
where it feels like I've got the world right here around me, and I open the Bible, but I am careful to smile at whoever passes by, to be very polite and courteous. We would be anyway, but I mean, polite and courteous with the people who are working there. And I've had conversations with folks who are asking me, now, what are you working on there? Is that a Bible?
Yeah.
And what do you do? And so just an opportunity to try to be a real ambassador wherever we are.
Mm.
And so I think Sunday afternoon lunch is a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
You leave church, you go out to lunch, and just the way you conduct yourself and interact with people
Well,
when they know you've left a worship environment.
right.
Um,
But we've also talked about it. You're basically saying outreach, which I think is
mm,
so important. And you tied that in yesterday with our backpack ministry, just saying how even if these children receiving these, things from us, these supplies, they don't know it's us. They still know that they're receiving it through God's love. And,
mm.
eventually I think they will know.
Yeah. Jesus talks about overcoming evil with good. Do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. And I think just as the church, just to be out in the world, just doing good, and trust that God's going to be working in the hearts of the people around us.
Right.
I mean, we just plant the seeds, but I mean, we can't do anything beyond that. It's really up to the work of the Spirit. But yeah, it's a great question, because I just am, that's why we do things like this. I mean, who knows? Somebody might listen to this podcast and think, think I'm going to open the old Bible today and just see what it says.
Right. And I like that it's, I feel like in the past, maybe evangelism seemed, there's always an ulterior motive or people were more suspicious of it. But I think the outreach now is, we're providing information on a platform. And if it, you know, kind of rings true with you, we want you to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And we're not being pushy. And
You have no, we are not going to benefit personally from that.
no, yeah.
It's, we have no ulterior motive. There's no self-interest going on there.
And the
Well,
outreach as well.
yeah,
So, yeah.
exactly. And in just our conversation about somebody has an alarm going off.
That's okay. And we'll
Okay,
touch
well,
on this.
okay. No, the conversation we're having about being out in the marketplace, one thing we have to be careful about is religious pride and arrogance, I
Yes.
think. And Paul addresses that in the passage. So if you look at verses 15 and 16, there's this line in here where he says God is reconciling both groups to God. In other words, it's not like we Hebrews are superior and you Gentiles are inferior. Both need to be reconciled to God. And for me, that eliminates pride, that I am constantly the beneficiary of what God has done and God is reconciling me. I have no room to boast or to look down on anyone else. Are you pondering?
Yeah, I am pondering, and I'm reading the verse myself, and it says, "Through the cross, thus putting to death that hostility through it."
Mhm.
And yeah, I think those two groups have to come to God in their own ways, and I feel like he's recognizing
Mhm.
that here.
In our preaching and our teaching, I really do think it's important to emphasize the cross because, again, that's what unifies us because we're all equal the ground is level at the cross. And it's when we, in the church, I'm thinking of just the big C church, become distracted with issues and try to persuade people by issues, I just don't see the power in that.
Right.
I really don't. What did you make of the line, and if you've got your Bible open at home, of the new humanity that Christ is creating? I think that's an interesting way of discussing the church. And at the end of verse 15, creating Himself a new humanity. And when I was working on Saturday, just kind of working through the passage, it just occurred to me. I mean, these Jews and Gentiles were like, "You're not even the same species as I am."
Right.
I mean, we're just you're on a totally different planet.
But I feel like we're there now, Sean. I feel like we're there with politics, and I know I keep bringing that up, but I feel like you could very easily replace Jews and Gentiles here with Democrats and Republicans.
You think you could now um, we have a wall right behind me. We could put pictures of people who are sort of typical of a certain political view, and you and I could probably identify them with what view they have
Right.
based on just what we're looking at,
Yes.
because we're just seeing that more and more.
Mm.
That's maybe not a really fair generalization,
Well, but I think
but
it
it's
harkens
kind of
back
a
to what
caricature.
Paul's
But
saying here. The Jews
Mhm.
and the Gentiles could certainly
Yeah,
recognize each other, and
there's difference.
yeah.
And I'm just concerned with all the meanness and the anger that we're seeing and how people are kind of acting on that hostility now.
Well, I'm wondering, you you have to think sometimes if when God's looking down, what is he thinking? Because he did bring Christ to bring this new humanity, and
Mhm.
sometimes I wonder, does he think, man, this did not turn out the way I was.
I'm wondering if he's thinking, all right, I got to get back down there again,
Yeah, exactly.
which could be coming. Who knows?
Yeah.
We did move into verses 19 and 20 where Paul just basically says, hey, this is kind of who you are now. And he has those three images, which I had to read that. If you've got your Bible open at home, I had to read 1920 multiple times to kind of, I don't know, what is he saying here? But basically, he's giving three different images that we are now citizens of one commonwealth, we are members of a family, and we are bricks in the same wall. And again, he's just emphasizing our unity. And I really try to do that on Sunday mornings here, that what unifies us together and look at, of course, the cross as that unifier. We then moved into the what we are being asked to do. And, no sermon should just leave us sitting there thinking, okay, what next? At least I don't think so. And so the two things that I see going on as we move into verse 3, and I didn't handle this well yesterday. I was worked up, and so I missed out on something. But as we move into to chapter 3, he just talks about make everyone see, and that through the church God is made known. And I just have the word glorify. That we are pointing people to God, not to ourselves, and that is our one of our primary missions and callings as individuals is when people encounter me, who do they see?
Right.
What do they see? What's their experience? And one of the ways that we share the gospel is that we draw people's attention not to ourselves but to God, and to make everyone see, to be made known. And that's where we talked about the backpack ministry,
Yeah.
that we want people to see God, not see us. So when you were hearing that or reading the passage, any if you were preaching that, what would you have said?
Well, I'm gonna go back a little to 19 and 20 and 2. I
Okay.
think
You got to
tells us.
stop me if I get.
No, I think that's what it takes us where we're going in 3. But I really liked, and I think I would have also drawn this out if I were giving the sermon, which I don't even want to think about. That's a very scary idea for me.
You're still looking for someone the last Sunday of November.
Yeah, anyone out there, last Sunday in November.
Uh-huh.
But um, I like the idea of a wall, and if you take away a brick, because
Mm.
again, we're uniting these two groups, and again, I see it as a metaphor for contemporary culture right now. And if you remove one of those bricks, you don't know which brick it is. You don't know what quote unquote side it's on. But if you remove it, we become weaker. And I think it's asking us to appreciate each other, even if we have dissenting views, um, because that's what it's going to require to be this new humanity, um, to really reach this goal that Christ and God have for us,
Mhm.
and that Paul's talking about.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that, yeah.
Mhm.
You could preach the last Sunday of November.
No, I'm good.
I'm hearing a sermon in there somewhere.
Good.
Yeah, when I was talking about glorifying God, I didn't go into this yesterday, but, in every church, in every worship service, there are things that happen that we don't like, that we say, I don't that's not my preference, that's not my style, that's not my taste, and I think it's if I went to a worship service and I agreed 100% with everything that happened, I would be in the church of one because 'cause I'd be the
Right.
only one in there.
Right.
And so I think one of our calls as the church to glorify God is also to kinda set aside some of our preferences.
Mhm.
And, we've always had debates since I've been here about whether or not I should wear a robe.
Yes. Yeah.
And, the great robe debate, it's kinda cool, I think. I
Yeah.
think people have kinda
Yeah.
gotten used to.
Well, it's the message, right?
That's what it's supposed to be.
And I can see it from both sides.
Same here.
People like tradition, and I completely understand that. And like I said, I think all generations eventually harken back to a
Mhm.
nostalgia for,
Mm.
their what they were used to growing up and what they've been used to as adults. But I think on the other hand, I see the concept that it could be less welcoming for people in a contemporary setting. That it kind of puts a what's the word? It kind of puts just a wall up
A barrier,
between
yeah.
a minister
Mhm.
and his flock, really.
It's I have sat in the presence of people debating this with me about whether or not I should wear a robe, and I agree with both of them.
Yeah.
Someone will say, I like it when you don't wear a robe because it makes you more relatable and
Mm.
accessible, and robes kinda trigger some bad memories for me
Right.
from church, and let's be honest, I mean, there are guys who look like me in robes who've done some really dreadful things to people. And then others say, I like it when you wear a robe because it does show that you're serious about what you're doing and that you are set apart by God for this particular task.
Mhm.
And it does connect me with my past. And so I get it. But what I was trying to say yesterday was sometimes we have to sort of set aside some of our own preferences so that we can glorify God and point
Right.
people to God.
Yeah, and that the focus is glorifying
Yeah.
God, right? You also brought up the example of was it Shell Church?
Upper shell and lower
Upper
shell.
Shell and Lower
Right.
Shell. And you do wonder if they had just focused on God and God's message, would they have ever had separate churches?
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
You would hope not. And then the idea, and we're getting ready to wrap this, we're going to land this plane here, is that we are called to be a blessing to others. And I love Paul's prayer for the church in verses 18 and 19, where basically says, I want you to know the love of Christ and to be filled with the fullness of God. And for me, when I think about a blessed life and a life of flourishing, if I know that there is a God who loves me and is over all powerful over everything, oh, that changes how I feel about life and the fullness of all the good that God wants to give me. Oh my gosh, what a life that would be. And I think it's our task to do what we can on this side of heaven to have people experience that kind of flourishing.
Right.
That's why historically, when people have fallen on hard times, they have turned to the church
Yeah.
in a lot of cases.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we talked about the Human Flourishing Program at Harvard. Those six domains, I'm going to share them again just in case. So these are the six domains that contribute to a person attaining a state where all aspects of his or her life are, quote, good. And they call this flourishing. Character and virtue, and certainly we teach that as a church. Close social relationships, I mean, that's what we're talking about in this changing world. Happiness and life satisfaction. I am happy and joyful and satisfied when I am in a deep relationship with God. Meaning and purpose, we all have a calling. Mental and physical health, that we support different ministries that contribute to people's mental and physical health. The Alzheimer's Walk, Crop
Yeah.
Walk.
And actually, it's National Mental Health Week, I believe.
Is it really?
Yeah, we'll post something about that later this week.
Yeah. And then financial and material stability. I cannot tell you how many times in my life I've had people call the church or come by the church needing some financial help. And
Absolutely.
and I think it's interesting stability there. It's not, the word is not prosperity or abundance. It's stability that I feel stable in what I have been provided to live on.
Right. Whenever I hear that, I always think Maslow's hierarchy of
Exactly.
needs and how we're fulfilling that through the backpack ministry.
Sure, they're hungry. That's a basic need.
Exactly. A basic need you have to flourish.
So let me ask you the question. According to the Global Flourishing Study, Baylor, Harvard, Gallup, younger people, and of course you're a millennial, um, are not experiencing flourishing as did our previous generations when they were in that stage of life. Why do you think that is?
Right. I mean, I think it goes back to the overriding anxiety. I think our, you know, our generation also is more separate from the church than it used to be. I see a lot of my friends coming back and getting actually very involved.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. And I mean,
What's prompting that?
you know, I think it's just looking for something in common with people that, is about love and, Christ's new commandment to love each other as I've loved you rather than looking for differences.
Okay.
I really do think that's
Mhm.
what some of that, and, building community, like I said, it's so important. But yeah, I mean, I see people getting much more involved and bringing their kids back. But I think, we left that for a while and, the just the everyday stressors of life. I think it's a little different for our generation, the housing market, the interest
Yes.
rates, jobs. It's a very different environment.
Mm. Well, church is good for people, and
Yeah.
I maintain that. And so I am very defensive of the church
Yeah.
because I think that uh, has the church done some harm over the centuries? Of course, because we got a bunch of people in here
Right.
and people leading it. But I think by and large, it's a gift from God
Yeah.
to,
Even,
to humanity.
if it's like a gateway to the community and volunteering, I think, that's just a great start. And then hopefully the message catches you too. And so,
Well, I think I've exhausted all my pages of notes. What about you, Jesse?
okay.
Anything?
Yes, I think we're good.
All right.
Hopefully people like the podcast. We'll see.
I know. Well, let us know.
Yeah. Give us feedback only if it's good though. Right.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding. We just spoke this entire time.
If you give us negative feedback, give us a day before you give it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, hope you have a wonderful week, everyone. And this coming Sunday, we are going to be at the end of chapter 4 of Ephesians. If you want to tune into Walnut Hill Church and worship with us, and I'll look forward to sitting down with Jesse and processing that portion of Scripture the
Yeah.
following week.
Good. I'm
All right.
looking forward to it.
Take good care, everybody, and bye for now.